Looks like we're good, Larry.
Yeah, just give it a quick second here. Yep.
All right, well, I will officially call the meeting to order for the work session of Wednesday, December 15th, 2021. First up, we have an update from the Irvington Woods Committee. I think we're going to promote a few people, Larry.
Yep. Just give me a second or two here and we'll get that moving. Okay. Joe, you there? There he is.
I'm here.
All right.
Good evening, everyone.
If there's any other late arrivals for the Woods Committee, I'll put them up on the panel.
Yeah, I just heard
more.
from Nick. I just heard from Nikki Coddington. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well, so I'm sure she's watching at home, but she won't be participating.
Okay. All right, good. All right, well, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. It's good to see you. First, welcome to Arlene and Mitchell. Look forward to working with both of you. Welcome to the team. So we're very excited to be with you tonight because the Irvington Woods Committee has several projects in the works right now. And we thought it was important that the board have an opportunity to hear what's going on, what we're doing, and what lies ahead for us in the near future. The first thing, which is the most simple, is everyone kind of forgets that it's not the O'Hara Nature Center, it's not the Peter Rowley Trails that defines the area. The area is known as the Irvington Woods Park. And within the Irvington Woods Park is the Peter Rowley Trailway System, the O'Hara Nature Center, the reservoir. So those things make up what's known as the Irvington Woods. And one of the things that CJ, and let me just stop for 1 minute, because again, with Mitchell and Arlene both being new, CJ Riley is the educational director and groundskeeper for the O'Hara Nature Center. He was added to the staff in June. He's been doing amazing work for us. He's part-time. He's been part-time employed for 4 or 5 years and is now full-time. Z on your screen is for Zoe Hamilton. Zoe is a member of the Irvington Woods Committee and very involved with several of the projects that we have going on right now. So I'm sorry, I should have brought them in on board first. So again, the first thing we're stressing a lot is to make sure on all grant applications, on all paperwork, on everything due, that we kind of define us as the Irvington Woods Park. In fact, at the Echo Fest that we held in a partnership with the Irvington Library, with the Irvington Theater, we realized that many of the people there really didn't understand. So we tried to make sure we made ourselves available, and we're trying to get as many people educated about what we do as we go forward. So that's the first thing. Just if you won't mind, give me 1 second here. So one of the projects that Zoe Hamilton got kicked off with CJ is we're doing an invasive vine removal and barberry bush removal. If you don't know, invasive vines are a major problem all over the place, especially in wooded areas. Barberry bushes are nasty, ugly things that grow everywhere. And we had a couple of cleanup days the past few years. And this year, Zoe came up with the great idea that we're doing 2 cleanups a month. We started with one in November. We're doing December, and then twice a month right through May, and possibly even June. You really need to take them down before they start to bloom, the bushes. So I'd like to ask Zoe to say a few words about the invasive vine and bush program we're doing.
Thank you, Joe. So last year, my family and I, with Joe's permission, started the barberry removal in the woods, and it was slow going, and we had the the Woods Committee had a conversation about how to be more efficient about it. And with Joe's support, we organized a few cleanups. CJ was incredibly instrumental and threw a lot of energy behind it. And we realized that there was interest. Students need, there were interest. Tried to, CJ and I worked together to put out a calendar of cleanup days so that people could put it on their calendar and plan ahead. And we've had 3, and we seem to have a core group of students who are attending and really throwing their backs into it. And the difference is incredible, only with 3 so far. So we're very encouraged. And I want to, again, to say that this may have been my idea, but CJ has really made this a success. And the students who thrive with his energy only speak to sort of his positive energy and hard work. So it's I feel that we will have a great success this year with the removals.
Yeah, we looked around to see what other communities were doing, and the ones that were having some success were having multiple days in the woods. But I think we've kind of taken it a next step by kind of plotting out the whole year. Just your estimate, I know you brought up a number last week at our meeting. What was the estimate of how many bushes you removed on the December 4th cleanup? Can you guys throw a number out?
I think CJ said CJ was the one hauling all of the bushes, and his estimate was we pulled 1,000 bushes last Saturday.
One day, and that's why I wanted that to come up, because I think that's just so impressive. And the thing that we should all be very proud of is what he has helped to do to create our high school volunteer program. We were going crazy because every time in the past we'd want to have a high school volunteer program for kids under 16 years of age. We'd need their parents to sign them up. We'd need them to do a waiver every time they wanted to be involved. So we created a volunteer program. So now there's this core, I think it's about 15 right now, right, CJ? 15, the number of volunteer kids?
Yeah.
And they're signed up in the program, and they're signed up for a full year. So anytime we offer a program where they want to volunteer, whether to get community service or just be part of what we're doing, they're already registered. Their parents have signed off on it, and that's really made it easy for CJ to mobilize this group when they're doing work. So the invasive vines are another part of it. The vines are strangling our trees. So we go out and we try to cut them. You cut them in a couple of different levels. We learned a lot from Haven Colgate, who's an instrumental person in the Hastings wooded area. And Nikki's a good friend of hers, and Nikki's also been instrumental with that. Also not seen here is a second horticulturist, Peter Strom, has been extremely helpful. He works with CJ part-time, and he really knows his stuff and has been helpful in the woods. So that's number one, the invasive removal program, the vines and the bushes, and we'll continue to do that. The next day is actually this Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, right, guys? Okay, so we'll be out there again this Saturday from 10 to 2 o'clock. That's again number one. Number two, and I just want to make sure I follow it, is the DEC grant that we have going on. I'll turn it over to CJ, but mostly here for Arlene and Mitchell. We were fortunate enough to get a grant from the DEC to help us conduct a tree inventory in the woods. And the work that's going on that is absolutely mind-boggling, way over my head. There are, CJ, could you quote some of the numbers of how many trees were actually found in the area we studied?
Sure. So Arlene and Mitchell, it's a pleasure to meet you both. Welcome aboard, and everyone else. It's fantastic to see everyone this Wednesday evening. So as Joe said, the DEC tree project grant that we were lucky and fortunate to receive on a part of New York State. One part that Joe's mentioning is to identify the hazardous trees located in the Peter Oali trail system. And so there are three categories. There's routine, hazardous, and critical. And of those three categories, there were over 256 identified trees that have to be removed. Not all have to be removed immediately. Of those 256 trees, I believe there are 18 critical trees that have to be taken out. That would be first priority. And then it's around 115 trees that are in between routine and in the routine area, and then the rest would fall under critical. So as Joe mentioned, there's another horticulturist, Peter Strum. And so Peter, on his one day that he works at the Nature Center, we work together, we go into the woods during the winter time. We've just started this in the past 2 weeks, taking out the trees that we were able to take out that aren't massive 100-foot trees, trees that are anywhere between 15 to 25 feet that have a nice angle to them, we're able to take out. So that's work that we're working on now with Miguel, who is the DEC. He was the one who was awarded to do the surveying and to do the research proposal. So based on his research, we're now following those directions and taking out the hazardous and critical trees. And then
one of the things I just want to read here to you, just to give you an idea of the impact of what it is we're doing, is that the report will end up showing that there are over 63,000 trees in the Irvington woods, and that the woods remove 7,866 tons a year of pollution that results in 356.3 tons of carbon. I can't even read the word, sequesters each year. So that's what our woods does just for the environment. So keeping it alive is critical, and there'll be much more in the report that will help us. We are really hopeful that the results of this study will lead to additional grants down the road. The obvious step is for all these hazardous trees, we hope to go back to the DEC and say, hey, look, you helped us fund this. We've identified these trees. Some are critical, some are important. Will you help us and give us a second round of funding, which is exactly what happened in Hastings. They got their grant, they did their study, they went back in, they were funded again, and they were able to take the next step for themselves. So we're anxious for the grant report. There'll actually be a public meeting where Miguel, again, who was the gentleman awarded the bid to do the project, he will make a presentation to everyone. I know we've been quite impressed with what we've seen so far, and we're looking forward to wrapping up so that we can start moving forward with everything there. So that's our tree grant. And number 4 and 5 are two very new things that the Woods Committee decided to move forward with about 6 weeks ago. The first one is that we have maps that were created back in 2010-11 when the Nature Center was first opening. And the maps basically were showing people how they would be able to maneuver in the woods, finding spot to spot, identifying things like Split Rock and the Hermit's Grave and the marshland, where you can get into the park, where you could get out. And we've added so much over the years, and so many things have changed that the map needs to be updated. So I will ask CJ if he would take a few minutes and explain the work that him and the committee are doing as they're heading towards coming up with a new mapping system.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. And I'd love if Zoe, if you also want to chime in, because Zoe is also in on the planning committee. So currently we have the Peter Oali trail system that dates back over 20 years. And what we're looking at as a community and as a committee is looking at how we can kind of synthesize the trail system that is, which is pretty complicated, and then kind of turn that into a simplified version. And so thinking about having a color-coded loop system, having different strategical points where if you're on the green line, it might be handicapped accessible, it might be more user-friendly, so have a grade of easy as opposed to, say, kind of more challenging. And this is all kind of feedback that Joe has gotten, that Zoe has provided, other residents have provided, that I've gotten from feedback from trail users, both local residents and also Rivertown users. So we're just synthesizing all this information into a kind of a cohesive new map that hopefully we'll have launched by June of 2022. And with that said, I'd like to, if Zoe wants to add anything to that, Zoe.
Well, and part of the reason behind it is to address also, there's been, because I think some of the trails are confusing, there's been some, I don't want to say vandalism, but people have taken it upon themselves to remove signage. And so there've been, trails have been forged where they weren't meant to be forged. And so we're hoping as a part of this initiative to try to more formalize, to simplify, and CJ's actually already begun trying to sort of cover up the free trail blazing that's been going on, because we've been learning through the DEC grant review that there's a lot of impact on the woods and the soil, and so we hope to sort of help protect the grounds by getting people to understand, staying on the trail, not creating new trails, and the importance of that for the health of the woods. Yeah.
So it's again, there are a lot of things Zoe said there that are important. The soil compaction, and we'll talk a little bit about that on the next thing we bring up, is really a problem. People creating their own pathways. Several years ago, we were taking down bike jumps that were being built all over the woods. And I think we've been able to have an impact on that because we have so much more of a presence in the woods now that's a little bit less of a problem for us. But and in addition, the reason the map has to be updated is there have been so many wonderful Eagle Scout projects. The most recent being the creation of a new trail towards the marshlands. And now there's another Eagle Scout who'll be starting within the next few weeks and continuing the work of the marshlands and creating a whole new area on the map for people to walk through. So that's very exciting stuff, but it is important to get that map updated. And I think the committee has all realized trying to simplify it is extremely important because we want everyone to be able to use it and understand it. So there'll be a lot of work.
Joe, can I ask a question?
Sure.
CJ, in terms of the new map, are there ways of making the map accessible other than the printed map that people would carry by themselves, into the woods? Is there any, like, I know there's some kind of geo tracking and, I don't know how sophisticated that is, but are there ways that people who find themselves in the woods can then, access the map itself?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dr. Lunke. We've been working on having a QR code system. So with the new map, each trail will have its own kind of QR code that will link up to all trails and then maybe another kind of popular trail app. And so we'll have our own Irvington Woods Park customized map. So if you, Dr. Lunke, are walking with your family and want to follow the official trail, then you can just hover over the QR code and then we can update that. And as a committee, let's say if Zoe's working on like a big educational project around Halsey Pond and has this educational material we can attach to a PDF, we can have that as a QR code as well. So thinking about ways to embed other projects into kind of the simplified map.
Good, Doc, with that? Okay, so back to the maps. One of the things CJ mentioned that I don't want to forget is he said the word Halsey Pond. The Woods Committee is also committed to keeping its eye on Halsey, working on things there, trying to make improvements, maybe taking some of our volunteer groups that we use to do the vines and do some work at Halsey. So we want to make sure the board's aware that we do consider Halsey to be part of the Woods Committee's responsibility, as it is the responsibility of the Recreation and Parks Department. we've asked for help from Woods with Halsey, and I know that we'll get it, and it should be a good thing. And we should be wrapped up with the maps, and we hope to have them out sometime by the summer, which is a very exciting thing. The next big thing before we just do a little program wrap up, and the next one's really a challenging one, is deer and the impact of deer on the woods and on residents and homeowners. So the committee, which first started with, I think, the thought, well, the deer are to blame for all the conditions in the woods, so let's try to figure out if there's anything we can do. As we talked, as we had discussion, we made a great contact through the Westchester County Department of Recreation, Parks, and Conservation, who was lent to us to teach us a little bit more about deer and the problem of deer. He manages several of the county's management programs for deer in 6 different parks, I believe, across the county. And he got us to thinking, and that, although the deer at some point have had an impact, although they may still have some impact, they are not the reason our woods are as barren, if you will, of growth and green areas, which made us think. So the committee's broken up into 2 different groups. CJ, Peter, and myself are focusing on the woods and the impact there and what we can do to try to see what the deer are doing in there now and what we might be able to do. Because the goal is we want the woods to be coming back to life. We want to see more green. We want things to happen. We've been studying photos from as far back as 20 years ago, and we're actually amazed that the woods look almost the same as they did 20 years ago, which was not what we expected. We expected we were going to go back and see a lot more signs of a lot more of green, if you will, and it's just not the case. But in those photos, we did see a much more evident sign of the presence of deer by, I guess the word is buck rubbing. CJ, did I get that right?
Correct.
Yep. So we're going to work that, and then Zoe and Charlotte Bin are going to take a look at the impact deer are having on residents and backyards and what kind of problems. In fact, we're going to be doing a real simple Survey Monkey study just to try to get people in the community to share their thoughts with us, to tell us what they've experienced. And that survey will probably be out relatively soon. We'll take the information we get back from that. And right now, we don't know what the end result will be of this study. At the very least, we hope to educate residents what to plant, what not to plant, how to help their own backyards, how to save money by maybe fencing certain areas, how we can maybe, make the woods a little bit healthier. But we don't know. We just know there's a lot of deer in Irvington, as there are everywhere else on the river towns right now. We don't want to just put our hands up and say there's nothing that can be done. So we're going to take a look at it. We're going to keep working on it. And we hope to have some kind of report within the next 6 months to a year. It's going to take some time. As I'm sure you know, once you start talking about this, people get very sensitive and very concerned. We have no intentions of marching in the woods with guns on our shoulders and or anything like that. We just want to know how we can help. We want to know, how do we make the woods healthier? How can we help residents? How can we help homeowners and their properties? Because an important thing to remember about everything we're talking about in the woods is the woods are an amazingly valuable asset to the village. And the more destruction that occurs in there, and the more of it that may deteriorate, it's losing, a valuable resource that the village owns right now. In addition to the environmental improvements that a healthy woods will give to the area. So those are things to keep in mind. When you consider that 10, 11 years ago, the Woods Committee was dealing with one thing at a time, the fact that we have all of this going on right now is really thanks to the support we've been getting from Larry and from the board. And we're very appreciative of that. I think for Mitch and Arlene, as you guys are involved, I think you'll learn how valuable CJ is and how much of an impact he's had in the community. In addition, the last thing I'll wrap up with before I see if CJ or Zoe want any closing comments is the programs going on at the Nature Center right now are extremely impressive, from Girl Scout programs to dance classes, to exercise, yoga, music with Mark, the Irvington Garden Club, and then our real crown jewel right now is the program which is known as the VIP program that we run in partnership with the Irvington School District. 2 days a week, special needs students from the high school, and 1 day a week, the same group from the middle school spend between an hour to an hour and a half at the Nature Center working on projects with CJ and other park staff. And it's been an amazing program. The district is thrilled with it. In fact, we'll be starting talks with them soon about the possibility of holding a summer camp up at the Nature Center for students like this. And there's great enthusiasm to take another step. So that's very exciting also. And we've just kind of confirmed that in the spring, we'll be resurrecting the Sustainability Day that we run with the entire 8th grade class at the Irvington Middle School. Many of you have heard me say for years, the future of the Nature Center depends on a partnership with the school district. The partnership has never been stronger than it is right now, and it's continuing to grow. So I'm very excited about that, as I know all of our committee is. So, you know, are there any questions from any of the board members?
I just want to say that my daughter took a dance class at the Nature Center and was really lovely, actually, that she was able to take a dance class outside. So, you know, thank you all for the work that you do.
Is that with Miss Lauren?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Lauren does a great job for us. She really does. So that's good to
So do
hear.
you know if there are plans for another Shakespeare Festival this summer?
Well, we haven't had any, I don't know. We're more than willing and open to it. I do know the partnership with Greg Allen and the theater is going to continue. We'll be talking soon about what else we may want to do together. You know, we've got a lot of good resources now, and I've never had a better committee than we have right now. Not that we haven't had good people, but we have some real workers right now, and that really makes a difference. You know, the fact that you have, Zoe and David Zweibel and the chairperson, Nikki Coddington, out there with saws and clippers and shovels sets a great example. And, we've had a lot of new people want to become part of what we're doing up there. If either Mitch or Arlene would like to spend a day and visit up there with CJ, I would definitely encourage it. And if you have time, visiting one day when we resume the VIP program would be a great thing. But anytime you want a tour or you'd like to go up there, we're always happy to show off what's going on at the property. So just let me know and we'll set it up for you. Okay. So CJ, anything in closing?
Sorry. No, just welcome aboard. It'll be a pleasure to get to know you both in due time, and thank you for the opportunity to kind of share what's going on at the Nature Center.
So?
No, I would just like to echo that I'm also very excited. I've been involved in the Woods Committee for a few years, and I think there's a lot of energy and forward motion and a lot of things that we're taking on, and it's I appreciate the board's support, and I'm excited to on the programs that we're working on.
So I thank everyone for giving us this chance. Again, we really wanted you to hear from us what's going on. That way, if you had questions or ideas, you could share with us. And if you talk to any residents, you can let them know what is going on. And Mitch and Arlene, I added you to the email list today. So as we start sending a lot of stuff out, I'll make sure you're included. You see anything you have questions about, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Okay. So thank you. And in closing, just want to I say it a lot, but it's so true. It's easy to do some of what we're doing when Larry's on the other end of the phone, always there to help when we need it. And, I know that I couldn't do almost half of what I get done if it wasn't for his support. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Joe. The board has been incredibly supportive of the committee, and obviously CJ is here because of the board. So
That's for sure.
That's a big statement. So
Yeah.
we appreciate it.
It's
Thank you.
definitely an important part of of Irvington. So it's finally getting kind of the, dedicated resources and focus that it's deserved. So we love to see it blossom. And, like as Larry said, Lonky, the Shakespeare Festival I thought was great because it got a different group of people there. So it's just all the new programming has been tremendous, and it's just great to use the woods and the nature center and the whole thing. It feels like you're in a different world when you're up there. So it's so nice that, it might be a 10-minute drive from the riverfront, but it feels like a world away. So it's worth it. Good return on time.
And you will get a couple of amazing reports over the next few weeks. One that's involved with Cornell regarding our property and the soil and the gardens. As soon as I can understand it better, I'll share it with you. CJ's going over it with me now, but I'll leave you with this, how far we've come. CJ was working with Cornell today to set up them coming to take soil samples so we could learn the impact of the jumping earthworm and its impact on the soil in the woods. And I can't even believe I said that statement, much less that I even understand it. So we are working really hard to heal the Irvington woods. So, and we'll appreciate your continued support on that. So thank you.
Thanks to all of you for the work that you do.
Great. Well, thanks guys. We appreciate it. And we
Sure.
appreciate you coming out on a Wednesday night to update us like this. And, if you want to come back, just let us know. You're always welcome.
Yeah, we'll update you. As soon as I think we have enough to give you the next step, we'll come back and set something up, which I hope will be in the spring. So
Great.
have a good
Well,
rest of
happy
the
holidays,
evening.
guys. Take care.
Thank
Happy New
you.
Year.
Happy holidays.
All right. Give me a second here. And okay. Okay. Okay.
All
Good,
right.
right? Yeah. Okay.
The next issue is discussion of the 2022 priorities. I know the Green Policy Task Force wanted to, share their thoughts. I'm excited for that. It doesn't have to be tonight. I don't see, I know Nikki was one of them, and she's not feeling well. So no pressure there. This is the first time we're talking about the priorities. We obviously have two new members of the board that we haven't heard from at all on their priorities. So I really see this as kind of the preliminary, this kind of like getting some of our, brainstorming ideas onto paper and have Larry run with it, and then we can tweak it. It seems like we're always good at this stage, and then it's the wordsmithing that takes an entire meeting in 3 hours. But, I think, the process, the way we've done it is we've typically kind of had, kind of big, broad brush strokes that we kind of want to guide us. And I think, looking at the previous priorities that are actually behind the agenda, there's still, I think most of those are probably still, relevant. There's obviously things we've completed, but, a lot of the broader brush strokes are still kind of, applicable, and I think that, I think that's an important thing to focus on for us, those 6 broad areas of work. And those are kind of almost evergreen. I mean, I think we could probably tweak them here and there and add a new one and maybe take one off. But, I think those are probably evergreen. And then, I think what we also don't want to do is lose focus on specific things we want to accomplish. I think that's why this becomes like a larger process, because it's kind of like, almost guiding principles as well as a to-do list. It's not just a straight to-do list, but there's certainly an element of that as well. So, but what did I leave out, Larry?
Oh, no, I think that's, as you said, the intention here is not to put people on the spot and say, okay, tell us your priorities right now. You know, it's really just to get you thinking a little bit, especially for our newest members of the board, but just to get you thinking a little bit about what you see for the upcoming year or years as priorities for this village. And, you know, I did put up on the screen the marked up version, but what I was hoping to walk away from tonight from this meeting is, you know, a couple of areas where there may be interest from our board members, areas that may be important that you think of. I can start putting those down in writing, forget about the exact words, but at least get the topics down and at least have a document like this that will start circulating around and start working on and, you know, getting into shape over the next month or so. So that we have something to guide ourselves for the upcoming year. As I mentioned to the board in an email on this topic, this is a little bit of a shift in timing for whatever reason. We have been kind of focused on our fiscal year as which is June 1st, as kind of the year ahead. But in thinking about it, not only now are the elections, you know, in November, which is right in the middle of the fiscal year. But also the budget season's coming up. So, you know, hypothetically, if you have a particular priority that is going to cost money or resources, you'll have an opportunity to budget for it or not in the upcoming budget session. So it all kind of flows a little bit better on a calendar year now that the elections have been shifted and all that. So anyway, that's where we are. I have to say it's a little bit awkward, you know, doing this remotely, and we're going to do our best with it. But and I don't want to go line by line, but I can point out a couple of areas that I think need some consideration. And if you have other items, you know, chime in and express your thoughts. I don't know how else to do this. You know, if we were sitting around a table, it might flow a little bit easier, but we'll do our best. So first of all, I did provide the board and also as an attachment, kind of a status report. So you did see as of the beginning of this month where we were on items. And so that can help guide, you know, where we go this coming year, whether the items are still of importance or whether they, you know, drop off the list or whether they've been completed or replaced with something. We can go through that. One item that, and it happens to be top on the list here, is the, you know, a year ago we were faced with evaluating the Irvington Police Department, which, as you know, was done, I think done rather successfully. So that item is crossed off the list, but I think it gets replaced with something, and I think it needs to get replaced with the ongoing and continued implementation of that report that was produced, and which, by the way, is ongoing. We should just state it that way, and I assume you want to continue on that. So that's an item, an example here that needs to be revised. So where it ends up on your list, whether it's number 1 or number 10 or any other number, is ultimately up to you and up to the wordsmithing. But that item needs to get included, in my opinion. You know, comprehensive plan is a very broad topic. For those that weren't directly involved in the comprehensive plan, that had a lot of elements to it. The major ones the board has worked on. There's probably still some other items that can be looked at, some other pieces of legislation, but nothing that I would consider major in comparison to the North Broadway zoning that we worked on already, and obviously the topic of affordable housing as well. But I don't know, you know, there's something there that if you if you want to have a little homework assignment, is to kind of scroll back and look at the comprehensive plan itself. There's a section on the village website that has that, and really go through what some of those recommendations are, and pick out things that may be more important to you than others. All right.
That was actually one of my thoughts or questions, Larry. I remember, I'd say it's probably a year ago, we kind of got the updated one that had almost, the breakdown of each main point of the comprehensive plan, and if it was completed, ongoing, hadn't started yet, delayed, whatever it is. So maybe we can do that again.
Yeah.
And just, update that and resubmit it so we can focus on those to see if anything have changed.
Do that.
And so far, I agree with you. The number one, is it's done, but now you're right. That's continuation, and it's almost, number 7 to complete the Matheson Park improvements. I almost wanted, one of the things I wanted to bring up that was kind of new is looking at the Matheson Park stage, because I think that's I feel like that's something that we've been talking about for a few years. So, I almost want to put that somewhere on the priorities, as getting that ball rolling, because I think that there is money for it. I think it's going to be a couple, I think we have to look at the overall vision for it first, which is going to be, I think, a combination of the theater and the rec. I think there can be a ton of programming and great things for the village that come out of that, especially now with Matheson Park being open to all, as well as being, much more heavily used. So I was thinking again about, we had the food truck last night at the Christmas tree lighting, and the line was around the block. And that's kind of one of those things, like I see like every Friday, you tell the food truck, you can come and you get all the proceeds, but you pay for a band that's going to play or whatever. I could see it being a really great thing for the village and for the river towns in general. So that's one of the newer things that I wanted to add. Again, we don't have to worry about the wordsmithing tonight, but that's one of the things I want to throw on. And then the only other new thing that I wanted to bring up, and we had started talking about kind of streamlining the swing set law. But to me, sheds, I've brought it up so many times that I kind of wanted to put pen to paper on that. I actually was standing on the back of my house and looking at sheds over my neighborhood, and every one of them looked like they were in violation and they were in the setback, and they were right next to the shed that the neighbor had. So to me, it's like, I think the law doesn't match what's there. And I think most people just have illegal sheds. And it just seems to me that, and the other thing we noticed, Kira and I went for a walk, and there's so many sheds that are kind of run down and ramshackle. And I think a lot of that is because like really gorgeous houses that are super well kept, and then a shed that's falling apart, is because they're right on the property line and they're illegal. So you can't really go get a permit and put in a new one. And it just seems like kind of a strange, law that we have on without, a lot of, reason for it, especially when you see sheds next to each other. Two neighbors with sheds that are directly next to each other, both in their own setbacks, like with inside the setbacks. It just seems like kind of a funny law that I think we should look at. We did find when we started talking about swing sets that we got into like, well, let's say if it's a 60-foot, swing set or something like that, and it looms over the property line, I think we could probably come up with a somewhat simplified thing, like find the average size of a shed and say, if it's bigger than that, maybe then it needs planning board approval or something, or if it's going to have a foundation. Like, I think there's things we can do that, for a normal shed that you buy, from one of those, manufacturing things, they come and they put it up in an hour. I think we should somehow streamline that whole thing. So those are kind of my two new ones that are specific. I have to say that for most of the I think the one thing we should probably go line by line are the 6 broad areas of work, and see if anybody has anything to add to those or take off. There are kind of broad enough that it's hard to say that you don't need them anymore. But I think there's probably the room to add something, especially with 2 new voices on the board. So that's probably the first thing I'd open up. Like, does anybody think any of these can come off? And I think eventually implementing the comprehensive plan recommendations can once we have them, implemented. But the rest of them to me seem kind of like, baseball and apple pie. Like it's kind of, it's hard to argue with them. But are there other things we want to add as well?
I guess I have a question. So what the quality of life enhancement, what is that sort of directly to?
I think it's so generic that it can be almost anything. That could be like, adding the stage in Matheson Park. That can be, the sheds. It can be, just about anything can be considered quality of life. It's almost kind of, I wouldn't say it's a useless phrase, but it's kind of an all-encompassing phrase.
Well, I was going to ask the same question, but because sometimes I think people use that as a euphemism for maybe not so great things, right? Like, as a way to curb behavior that you may not want, and I wanted to get a little more insight into what we meant. If it's that generic, is there any way we can tweak that to make it more clear that it's a positive, that we want to use it in a positive way?
Sure. I mean, I think that's what we'll, as I'm saying, one night we'll spend almost an entire work session wordsmithing, but that's one that we can probably star now, Larry, and say, think about what we're really trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, and you know what? Feel free to send me your thoughts about how you might want to tweak that to narrow it down so that it doesn't imply anything that is unwanted. That you don't want it to imply. So yeah, makes perfect sense.
And then if there's
I'll
any
follow
others-
this up. I'll follow this meeting up, by the way, with a little summary of bullet points. Some of it's homework, some of it's kind of prompting you to respond to me with something so that I can gather it. So we don't just sit here and start making up words. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's not the intention.
And I think, this is one of those things that Mark Gilliland is really good at. Like he's not just the wordsmithing, but he loves this kind of this planning piece of it. So it's unfortunate he's not here, but again, this is just kind of the kickoff and, to let Mitch and Arlene really kind of, get deep into the priorities for the year.
So I would comment on, Brian, on the two items that, in support of the two items that you brought up, the stage in Matheson and zoning, zoning for things in general, but specific, I guess, sheds and swing sets and things. One, as far as Matheson's concerned and the enhancements which are there, and I know it's listed in a couple of places, both as ongoing initiatives and long-term goals, but I think we need to really take a closer look at the Astor Buckout intersection there. And I know we've done some preliminary studies there. We've spoken since I've been on the board, and one of the unresolved comprehensive plan issues was the south side of Buckout Street becoming a one-way street to make it both safer and to improve traffic flow on that street. And we've talked about it, and I know we've sort of waited a little bit because we had a traffic study going on. We wanted to figure out on Astor Street where drop-off spots could be, and then the pandemic hit and nobody was going into the city and there were no cars dropping off. But I think that's changing. I mean, I passed by the parking lot now, and I don't know what the data is on passes, but there's certainly a lot more cars in the parking lot now than there have been in the last year and a half. So I think some combination of the improvement of traffic flow. I know we've also talked about traffic on North Buckout Street and how it curves around, and trying to control access to Matheson, when going over that part of the bridge as well. But I specifically feel that South Buckout Street needs to become a one-way street. I think for traffic flow, but also for safety. I think it's very difficult driving north on South Buckout Street and trying to make a turn, either making a right or a left, even just making a right turn going up Main Street, or God forbid crossing Main Street and trying to go to the post office and go up North Buckout. So I think that's an important thing. And again, I know it's mentioned a couple of ways here within safety and traffic calming. It's on that line there. It's on the streetscape line in terms of how we would do wayfaring directionality on, down there. And I just think it needs to be moved up a little bit. Secondarily, on the sheds and just the general, permitting and building permitting, I know we always have a line somewhere in there about making it easier for people to get building permits and making it easier for things to happen and to review that. And I don't see, I know it's here, I just don't see it in front of me. Whether it's usually in the ongoing initiatives. But anyway, I think that number 9 on the ongoing initiatives, update the process
Yes.
for building renovation permits and site approvals. You know, I know progress has been made, and I think we should certainly talk about the progress that's been made. But I think there's still some ways to go, and you know, it can be investigated a little bit more.
Great. Agreed. All those things.
I mean, I know that I'm coming from the theater commission, so I have a different view maybe, but I 100% support the stage in Matheson Park. I mean, that came up a lot in discussions at the theater commission, especially once the pandemic hit, about ways to do things outside. But I think, and not having air conditioning, and even though the theater is now getting air conditioning, I think having an outlet in the park right there would be great. And then of course the rec department can use it for the events that they already have events going on in there, and they can have new ones and all other kinds of opportunities. So I think that would be a natural fit after the renovation of Matheson Park. So I just want to throw my support behind that.
Okay.
I have a question about, well, a comment, I guess, about number 5. That's, you know, the valuing diversity. I think as a village, like I just think I would like us to think a little bit more about what that means in a more concrete way. So how, you know, I think, you know, I've heard this board discuss hiring, but just in other ways, like in programming and how we engage different people, like to village committees and how we do outreach in our community. I also think about sort of, and this crosses a broad spectrum, which is, you know, and maybe crosses communications also, but like how we get people engaged in the community, a broad cross section of people. But and I know a lot of that is like getting people on our email listservs and things so that people know what's going on in the village. I think, you know, Mitch and I think talked a little bit about this at one point, but a lot of people don't know about those listservs, and obviously they're very valuable, I think, to engaging in the village, because you can only engage in the village if you know what's going on. So I think that should be sort of that communications piece, to me, is important in getting people more involved and in engaging different parts of our community.
So I would just say this is an example of an item that is on this list from the Board of Trustees, where I would absolutely welcome some direction and guidance and assistance in implementing this. I don't think this is one where your paid administrator is the one that just goes out and implements this item. There's lots of things on this list that's what I do. This is one of them that's a real reflection on the board, and obviously I'm here to assist, but I would welcome, you know, some direct interaction with members of the board on this, and feedback and guidance. So thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? I know that as Brian mentioned, Nikki and I think the Green Policy Task Force in general wants to be able to chime in on this. Obviously, it's not here tonight, but you know, I'll respond back and invite their comments. Obviously, if there's another meeting that you talk about this, they'll of course, you know, welcome to participate in that as well. So we'll see what's on their mind as far as environmental items, but you know,
I think, Larry, too, any department heads or any volunteer boards have input for us, you know, we're more than happy to. It's not, you know, while this is our list, if there's something we're unaware of or something that, a group that has needs that we're not aware of, feel free to bring it to our attention. So it's on our radar screen. So.
Yep. No, we don't hesitate. Some of these items are on here because the staff knows that they need to get done. So yeah, for sure.
One of the other,
Go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
A little
You
awkward,
can go
right?
first, Darlene.
Okay, thanks, Larry. So one other thing was that the list of committees, how often do we review sort of what existing committees are and whether newer, different or new committees are needed? I'm just thinking about the police review committee, and I spoke a little bit to Frank about this, but that there was some interest in some kind of ongoing interaction between that specific committee and the police department, because I do think it was very positive. I think it really did create sort of a joint, right, like this like goal on the community side and the police officer side to improve policing and not just improve policing, but improve conditions or whatever the police officers, right? They know their job better than anyone and they know what their needs are, but some sort of like ongoing committee there. People have expressed an interest in doing that, but it just also made me think more broadly of, and that's partly I have to get familiar with what the committees are, but do we review them and again, this is again, like who gets on the committees, how do we encourage people? That's part of that ongoing, like involving, right? This is a time commitment for people.
Yeah, I think there's probably a multi and Larry Schaffler or Blanky, feel free to interrupt. Typically, there's like some main boards that are kind of statutorily required. The ARB, the planning board, zoning board, those kind of boards. Then there's the Green Policy Task Force. There's the, Slow Down Irvington or the traffic committee group that are more ad hoc, that we kind of say, hey, you know what, we need a committee to work on this. It's kind of like what we did with the police committee the first time. And I think that those are, we just kind of, if we decided we needed a committee for, looking at stages that would be appropriate for Matheson Park, it's something we could kind of put together ad hoc. Traditionally, the way they work is, I formally appoint people, but the way I usually do that is by sending out an email list and, sending out email blasts and saying, if anybody's interested in serving on a committee, and then if they're, if the board, or if like in this case, the rec or the, for the stage committee, if the rec or the theater had people in mind, they would say, hey, can you reach out to these people and see if they're interested? So it's kind of like typically kind of organic like that. So it's, those are kind of easy to set up in a short period of time. One item that had, a couple people had emailed about was some towns have a combined ARB and planning board. So is that something that we want to explore and look at? To change that, we'd have, obviously there'd have to be like the local laws and everything like that. But for the ad hoc committees, it's much easier, I think is the short answer.
So I would just comment that I think, it would be a very high priority to form a new committee that was a police relation committee, or however we want to describe it, based on the final police report that was issued, because I know that one of the last things in the report was that this needs to continue. So certainly that committee needs to be formed. I think Brian, in some way we can work together. Arlene, I know you are interested, and I think you're going to be the liaison there as well. But a way of wording an email out so people can get an idea of what the specific desires of this committee and interaction are. And I think that's got to be a high priority. I think that should be done soon. And, it needs to be listed, but it also needs to be done. And in the same vein, again, something that we've talked about over the years and is always somewhere, on the list is more and better interaction with all the departments in the village. I think the police committee is a crucial thing, but I think it's also important that we have continued communication with all the departments, and in some way put faces to names. other than when they're making once a year, sort of budget proposals, perhaps, twice a year or more, where we get updates and there's some type of, not just a liaison report, but actually a, direct, interaction with department heads. Joe, we see all the time, probably more than we want to, but, a lot of the other guys, and even, village staff within the, in the business office, if there's something that needs to be done, putting faces to names, you can't, it couldn't hurt. And having people, come to the board with, either updates and or just descriptions of what they do and how they're doing it. I think, again, it's in there, but it's something that doesn't really happen all that often with us.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, back when I started on the board, we had the police chief and the head of the DPW sit in on every meeting. We realized that about 90% of them, they never had to interact with us. So we kind of let them go. But, I think you're right, Larry. Maybe what we do is we set up a schedule for, the first part of every work session each month. We just have a 15-minute update from each, major department in the village or something. And there's some we hear from, like we hear from Joe quite a bit. But other than that, we don't really hear from them too often until it's budget time, really. So it's not a bad idea. Let's try to remember that, Larry.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, so on the police committee, as Larry just mentioned, the report certainly recommended it. The board adopted that report, but it really is up to you all as a board to determine and clearly define what the role of the committee is, and what their role is in interacting with the police department. What your goal is for what they should be doing. I think the danger in any of this is if you don't clearly define what people should be doing, there's going to be a lot of confusion, and it won't end well. But I think in the case of the committee that worked last year or earlier this year, there was it took a lot of meetings, but there was a very defined role there, and we knew what our goal was here. We didn't know how we were going to get there, but we knew what the role was. So as long as the board defines what the role is, I think that's important to do that before we move forward.
And, again, not to monopolize the conversation, but the area of primary focus, what was number 3 and has been moved up to number 2 in relation to in-law suites and, in accessory apartments. And I know that was one of the, in the updates that we got, that was really one of the not done. I think really nothing much has been achieved or done with that program, really since it was founded. And I'm not sure, why that is. Maybe a review of it, can help as well. I mean, I know it was one of these things where when we were passing the law, and I wasn't on the board at the time, but I remember part of the discussion and the fear was, what happens if this happens all over the place? And should we be limiting how many of these we're going to allow, in a year? And what's it been 6 or 7 years that we've had this on the books, and how many are there? 1, 2?
There's not that many. Yeah.
We did cap it at 50 total village-wide.
We capped it at 50. Okay, great. I'm glad we
haven't
were
bumped
very
up
worried
against
about
that.
that.
Yeah.
But again, in all seriousness, this is under the affordable housing and quality of life. You can look at this in a lot of ways, but allowing people to to live in their homes and finding ways for accessory and in-law apartments, and either again publicizing it and again perhaps reviewing it. They had an interesting article in the Times, sometime during this week. I think it was in the Sunday Times, in New Jersey, that that there were some unintended consequences of their sort of accessory apartment law that ended up allowing two homes to be built on a single building lot because of what the wording was. And also, again, I'm not sure what our wording is, whether we now require the homeowner to be present in the main home as the person who lives in that home, if that's a requirement or not. But I thought in that article I read that was ruled as not being allowed, that you're not allowed to require as part of an accessory apartment law that the homeowner be the primary resident in the main home. So it may be time to look at that, and not only to publicize it, but perhaps to review it.
Okay.
And I'll shut up for a little while.
And it looks like number 8, Larry, too, is almost done, right? So
Yeah, as of we hope as of Monday that'll be done.
yeah, so that'll be nice. We'll get something done already.
Yeah, exactly. We can just cross it right off.
Yeah, exactly. We'll leave it on though, so we can take it off. But, you know, I mean, it's I think too, like on some of them, especially the areas of primary focus that we have trouble with, like the number 9, say. It's one of those things where do we have to look at kind of what the theater did and say, do we need a dedicated part-time, kind of social media person or something like, or a marketing person, or do we need to look at a different way to kind of skin that cat that we've kind of, throw our hands up every year. And, every time we have a major issue, people say we're sneaking it through after talking about it for a year, so it's because we haven't really, or maybe we just need to start by talking to the other mayors and see if they come up with, if their villages have come up with something that's worked well, or, I think we can kind of go through each one of these and figure out, where we can even put them on the calendar. I think that's one other thing, Larry, that I'd like to add to the list is for the areas of primary focus, coming up with like a tentative schedule on when we might look at them. Obviously it's always scheduled, subject to change if something happens like, COVID, but some of them begin planning for expanded firehouse where that's already the wheels are definitely in motion. Comprehensive plan, that's mostly in motion, but it's most of these, it's like, I feel like they're started already. The smart community certification program is like a lot of those are started, and but if we can try to almost come up with like, this is a spring thing, this is a summer thing, to kind of plan it so we can try to hit our marks a little more tightly.
Okay.
We might just be adding a parenthetical phrase next to it when we think we're going to try to start it, by month or.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, for Mitch and for Arlene, I think a lot of the work on this is kind of like when you're sitting at home going, hey, what do I want to accomplish in the next year or two? And you can kind of just brainstorm and shoot an email to the group, and we kind of put it all together. And kind of whittle them away, but we typically just add to them. We don't typically whittle a lot away, but so it's, again, we don't have to finish this tonight, but it's kind of going through them, and I think the clarifications you guys asked for, that's super helpful, as well as new things that we haven't even thought of yet. Or as you talk to your friends and neighbors, things that are important to them that maybe we haven't talked about in a while, or maybe they haven't really been involved in village politics, and they say, geez, why do we always do this way? Or why don't we do this, or whatever it is? This is a great time to do it. And we also, if you miss it for the priorities, you can always bring those things up, of course, but this is a good way to kind of map out our year.
I think I don't sit around my house and think what I want to accomplish in the next year or two. So I feel like I'm falling down on that job. I better for my own life now.
We'll do it on the train to the city. How's that?
All right. So I'll, unless there's other comments, I will make changes to this document, circulate it around just to, keep it moving. And I'll also give you some feedback on some of the things that came up tonight that aren't things that will be in the document, but things that you need to think about. So I have some notes on that as well. Just to keep it.
reach out to at least Nikki Coddington or the GPTF and just let them know. But,
Yep.
The two other things I had for everybody here, I will likely be I'll be sending out the liaison assignments by, before the weekend, just so everybody will have those before Monday. Not that I expect you to have full reports on each one of your assignments for Monday's meeting. And then a new item that I'm adding to the agenda for Monday, you'll see it, I guess, probably tomorrow or Friday when it's finalized, is a discussion on the Madam C.J. Walker Plaza. We're naming the area outside of Village Hall, Madam C.J. Walker Plaza. So if you guys want to start thinking about that, we had discussed it as a board, I don't know, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. But that is something that was one of my priorities that, to me, it's hopefully something that doesn't need to go on this list because it's so easy and kind of straightforward and the board will either support it or not. But my thought there is I just kind of I think it'd be a great way to honor Madam C.J. Walker. And I think it also elevates the whole front area of Village Hall. Like last night's tree lighting would have been great to say, come to the Christmas tree lighting at Madam C.J. Walker Plaza. It just sounds, or Madam C.J. Walker Plaza at Village Hall. Like, I just think that sounds like really cool. And it's obviously a great way to honor, a famous resident, famous former resident. So just get your thoughts together, questions. To me, I see a simple plaque that just goes on that wall that juts out. As you'd be able to read it as you're coming up Main Street. It just seems like a perfect place for it. There's like a nice spot where you can put a nice plaque. So, and my thought on timing for that is kind of do it sooner rather than later. And then if we want to do the street naming that we've been waiting on kind of the Villa Lawara folks for, we could always do a formal or a kind of a formal rededication of it, and an unveiling of it as well, on the same day. So those are I just want to throw that out there. It's something that we haven't talked about in a while, and obviously Mitch and Arlene have not talked about it before. So questions and concerns and excitement or whatever for Monday.
So Brian, just to be clear, you're considering both Madam C.J. Walker Way on, as an honorary
Correct.
street name, right?
Yeah,
and
Fargo Lane is exactly right.
Right. Okay.
And I think
Okay.
What kind of reinforced it to me too was kind of some of the commemorate work with, being on Main Street's important. And obviously having a street named after you is probably the highest honor, but I don't think anyone has a plaza named after them. And certainly not on Main Street. And, it didn't really exist. The Village Hall Plaza didn't really exist until we kind of did that big cleanup, and it's become such an important spot. I mean, Mitch's band played there on Halloween. And I think for a lot of people, it was the only band people saw because it's such a central location. But, Mitchell Bard and the Bard 5 at Madam C.J. Walker Plaza is, I think, cooler than just to the right of the steps. So I think it's great for branding the village and for, commemorating Madam C.J. Walker as well. So.
I mean, Brian, you're joking, but think about the posters. If the posters had said instead of, in front of
100%.
Village Hall, it said Madam C.J. Walker Plaza,
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think it's actually it's a very, very cool thing. And I think it'll quickly become known as that because we do have several events there every year. And then I think about, all the Black Lives Matter speeches and the other, the other kind of rallies we had in town. If you said, meet us at Madam C.J. Walker Plaza at Village Hall, I just think it's such a kind of a cool thing. And it's become an important part of the town where, until that big cleanup happened, there just wasn't space. There was like, vegetation and things there that kind of prevented it from being used, frankly. So it's the, center of town, really, figuratively and literally.
Yeah, I just wanted to add too, I think with commemorate with the statue being unveiled in June of 2022, I just think that it gives a lot of weight to, we are a welcoming town, right? We affirm like all of our history and like we're recognizing a very like important figure in what she accomplished as a person, one of the famous people who did live in our town. I think it's a fantastic idea. And I think it will put a lot of weight behind what we say, when we talk about the kind of community that we want to be.
Yep. And I think it's a great conversation starter. Like, what's Madam C.J. Walker Plaza? Who's Madam C.J. Walker? Like, it's I never knew who Fargo was from from Fargo Lane before until we were looking to rename it. And it turns out he's Wells Fargo's brother, like the guy who founded Wells Fargo's brother, but he was famous for creating the traveler's check. That was his claim to fame with American Express. So, and I think he was a founder of American Express actually with the traveler's check. So, I think it's one of those interesting, when you have those names, there's a reason, and it's like it keeps history alive. So let's do it for somebody that deserves it and was kind of marginalized by Irvington for a long time. Not marginalized, but almost forgotten. Like I didn't learn about Madam C.J. Walker in school, and she lived in my town. So, it's an interesting thing. So I think this will help with those discussions for sure.
I think there's an argument to be made also that aside from Washington Irving, obviously, she's the most famous, accomplished resident that's ever lived in Irvington, right, for any length of time, and the legacy of it, the mansion, is not on the water hidden away or whatever. It is right on Broadway that we all drive past again and again and again and again. So for in addition to all of the great reasons you pointed out, there's yet another reason of just like, if not her, who,
Yeah, I guess if Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones give us another 8 years or so, we can find another plaza for them. But
and how supportive they are of the theater. That's really the measurement for me.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a public challenge to Catherine and Michael, but it's it's very true, and I always think it's very flattering that she chose Irvington. She could have gone other places, but she chose Irvington. That's where she wanted to be. So now we're kind of closing that loop. But I just wanted to bring it up that it's going to be on there because it's not a kind of typical agenda item. So if there's other thoughts or concerns, but it seems pretty straightforward to me. But anything else, Larry? Or Mitchell or anything?
No, that's it. Good.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Again,
Right.
if you have thoughts, questions, concerns about the priorities, it's kind of a living document. It's, it doesn't have to be, oh, we missed it. We can't do that now. And we find that a lot of our priorities are kind of dictated to us as things go along. So, but I think by getting this done early in the calendar year, when all our brains kind of think of years, is helpful. And I think putting, a rough kind of time frame on these, at least on the priority items, it will help us to focus on them in due time.
Yep. Very good.
Great, guys. Well,
All
it's
right.
only 8:17, so that's pretty good.
Not bad. And and we'll see you on Monday night.
Sounds good. Have a great weekend, everybody.
All right,
Great.
thanks. Have a good
Bye.
weekend, everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.